Spurs fans, you're having your say this afternoon, 81089 on the text. I'm not a Spurs fan, but looking from the outside, I tend to agree with Rory. Have Spurs really progressed? Pretty sure Conte could have guided them to 5th. Well, he didn't. He's got more points after 60 games than Klopp and Arteta. The players need time to adapt. He needs time to bring in the players that fits his system. That's from Dave, the Spurs fan. 03717223344 is the number if you want to have your say on the radio this Monday. Good afternoon, Darren. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Darren. Okay, are you happy with things at Spurs?
I think people have got to be a bit realistic. He hasn't got the players that he wants in, so you've got to give him at least 3 seasons, because the problem if we keep changing managers, we're going to end up in the same situation every season. We've got to give the manager a chance, because I've been going for 47 years, and we've never been a team that doesn't concede goals. We've had terrible defences. And a lot of the fans want to see exciting football. You pay a lot of money. And I think we've got to be realistic. We are not going to, unless we get a big owner come in and spend loads of money, we are not going to win the title.
Although Darren, having a history of having some average defenders doesn't mean that it's acceptable now. I would also say that over the years, Tottenham have had some excellent partnerships at the back, haven't they? Like most recently, the Vertonghen-Alderweireld partnership was actually the foundation for why Tottenham launched successive bids for the title.
What bids?
Well,
we blew the one against Leicester.
Yeah, agreed. But you were in the conversation for winning the league 2 years.
Oh, come on! We weren't even close. Look at what happens to City. They don't start well, but they always finish well. It's not how you start; it's how you finish.
I do agree with that, but so you're saying that it's not a problem that you concede a lot of goals because you always concede a lot of goals?
It is a problem, but the problem is you've got to get players that play that system. The players we have, he hasn't had many players come in that actually replace the ones we already had.
Darren, sorry, Darren, just to cut you off there. You said in 47 years you've been going to watch Spurs. Is this one of your happiest seasons?
It's not my happiest season. My happiest season probably was in the 80s when we had a good run of winning trophies.
But in your opinion, does Ange Postecoglou merit 3 seasons? You've just said he needs that time. So does he merit 3 seasons after this season's performance?
Well, other than a couple of players, who else has he brought in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he needs time. He needs his players to implement his philosophy, that's for sure. Darren, thank you very much for your call. Good afternoon, George, the Spurs fans. How are you, George?
Hiya. So I'm just travelling back from the game. Went to the game yesterday, and I really didn't mind what I saw. But there's no point playing that kind of good style of football when you're 4-0 down, 3-0 down against Arsenal and Liverpool. I mean, it just wasn't good enough. But I'd definitely give Ange Postecoglou more time. We've tried the pragmatic defensive managers, and that was just awful to watch. I mean, we paid the most expensive season ticket in the Premier League, and it's just awful to watch. So, I mean, I absolutely don't mind what Ange has done in his first season. I mean, finishing 5th after taking a team that lost their best player last season, finishing 8th, had 3 different managers in a season. I don't see what Spurs fans' issue is. Like, why are people up in arms against him? I really don't get it. I appreciate that these last 4 games have been awful, but I'm not sure really what people are expecting from Ange to do in less than a full season.
Would you not just expect to have not lost these last 4 games at the business end of the season in the manner that you have? Surely, after what we saw happen at St James's Park, that should have been a wake-up call. You concede 4 in your run-in for the season, the business end, when it most matters. You get absolutely battered. Alexander Isak on fire, spinning Van der Ven on his head and all that. Is that not the moment to say, right, enough's enough, we're going to change the system, we're going to have to approach the game against Arsenal in a very different way, the game against Chelsea, then off the back of conceding all those goals against Arsenal? Surely at some point this becomes about the manager and his devotion to a system that is costing you.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it is his first season. He needs to kind of install that mindset with his team, and so there's no point kind of trying to grind out wins and play this really defensive, pragmatic style of football in your first season. You really want to kind of install that mentality. So when these new players come in and you've got kind of 3 or 4 seasons under your belt, you can have that kind of mentality change. I mean, Arteta kind of tried it in his first season. I remember he started playing 3 at the back against Wolves at home and they lost. So, I mean, there's no point kind of tinkering around with it. You might as well kind of get the solid foundation of how he wants to play football installed in these players early on, and then maybe 3 or 4 seasons down the line, you've got a game that's really important, hopefully maybe we're vying for the title or vying for a trophy. That's when you kind of change the system. You can kind of slightly tweak it and tinker with it. But for now, I just keep playing how you're playing and really install that mentality in the side.
I agree with you, George. I think that's a fair, a decent call. Considering you've been at the game, you kind of like what you see, but you know it's going to take time for things to be fully implemented for Ange's way. Good afternoon to Gary, the Spurs fan here. The only reason we're not going to be in the Champions League next season is because Ange is arrogant. If he doesn't show a depth to tactical ability and realise that our game's to be tighter and more cautious, he won't be a manager for much longer. Also, good afternoon to Ian in Shropshire. He says Ange needs to know who's in the squad and who he can trust to implement his philosophy. I think it's so refreshing, Rory, to have a manager come in, implement his style, the way he wants his players to adapt and go for it. And it has worked, right, for the majority of the season. You're right, it's business end at the minute. They might lose Champions League. It looks like they are going to now. But you can't then say that's a bad season. There's been progress, that's for sure.
I think your expectations over the season change. So the way that you feel before a ball has been kicked is very different to how you'll feel 15 games into the season. And at the beginning of the season, if you'd said to me, Harry Kane will go away to Bayern Munich and Tottenham will somehow bring in a new manager and finish 5th, I would have said it was a decent season. But let's face it, they have had their name on a Champions League spot for a large portion of the season. And it's getting to the stage now, like we're saying 5th, they're going to finish 5th. Like, if their form continues, all it takes is Newcastle United to find a little bit of rhythm, which they are in, and suddenly 5th is in jeopardy. And I'm not joking. Chelsea are in form. Like, we could end up finishing above them on goal difference. And if Chelsea end up finishing above Tottenham this season, I think that will paint Ange Postecoglou's season in a very different light.
And that's a fair point. Good afternoon to Nick in Middlesbrough. How are you, Nick?
Yeah, hi, I'm in York, actually, Siobhan, but I'm a Middlesbrough fan, so I've got no skin in the game.
That's where I've gone wrong.
That's okay.
What would you like to say, Nick?
I watch a lot of football, so I'm taking it as a neutral's viewpoint. I was also at Chelsea when they battered us 6-1, so let's forget that one. But you know, when you're talking about the season overall, Rory, you're forgetting one thing.
Go on.
I think you're forgetting that form comes into it, and it's the form of other teams as well. So Newcastle have hit a bit of form. Chelsea have hit a bit of form. There's only Arsenal and probably City, who have been consistently good all season. So when Spurs are getting battered by these teams, yes, Spurs are naive. Yes, they play expansive football. Yes, they get found out. But I don't think you're giving any credit to the teams that have beaten them comfortably, that have also hit a bit of form as well. And there's no divine right to finish anywhere in the league, you know. So irrespective of what the start of the season, middle of the season, end of the season feels like, if they finished 8th last season and finished 5th this season with a new manager, no Harry Kane, it's still progress. And what you said about Potts sacking him at half-time against Arsenal, I get that. It's a knee-jerk reaction to a horrible kind of performance and a defeat. But Pochettino has got one of the youngest squads in the league. Your owners, by the way, are culpable, and the recruitment's all over the place, but who's going to do a better job than Pochettino at the moment? You've got to give these managers at least a season and a season and a half, maybe 2-3 windows to get their philosophy embedded with the right players. But please take account the fact that other teams come into form. Villa were in form. They lost at the weekend against Brighton. They lost in the Europa conference against Olympiacos. Will they drop off a cliff?
No, I do know what you mean, Nick. Yeah. But there is, as much as you're saying that teams come into form, you're absolutely right. But remember, the Tottenham team that lost to Chelsea weren't in form. A week before Chelsea beat Tottenham, we had our worst result of the season against Arsenal. And equally, when Newcastle...
game, Rory.
Yeah, but you're saying that they came into form. I'm saying that our worst performance of the season happened 8 days prior to the Tottenham result. And you said that it happened for Newcastle as well. They were in form. 1 week before Newcastle played Tottenham, they drew at home to Everton. So they weren't necessarily. They weren't teams in form. They weren't. They became in form off the back of playing Tottenham. Tottenham invigorated their form, but they weren't teams in form.
I get that, because form turns on, doesn't it? I'll give you an example. So Middlesbrough have we've only lost one game in 12 at the end of the season, right? But at the start of the season, we didn't win any of our first 8 games. So at the start of the season, we couldn't buy a goal, we couldn't buy a win, we were losing to absolutely teams who we should have been battering. Our expectations at that time were, let's just not get relegated. Now it was then, well, we might sneak the top 6. We finished the league in the Championship as the most informed team. We've run out of games, and that's absolutely fine. We finished 8th. We deserved to finish 8th because we had over 46 games. We had bits of form, bits of out of form. The only team who beat us, and they were quite jammy, were Leeds United with an offside goal.
And there was progress, Nick, throughout that season. And that's, I think, what you're trying to allude to now. Spurs and Chelsea have had progress. I do appreciate your call. Thank you very much, Nick. You're listening.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs. Monday to Friday afternoons, 1 till 4. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.